Welcome to Designed for More, a podcast about what it means to live in alignment with who you really are. I'm Julie, former CEO turned human design guide and soul-led entrepreneur. Here we explore the journey of remembering your true nature and creating a life that feels deeply good from the inside out. Because you were never meant to settle. You were designed for more. Hi loves, and welcome back to Designed for More. Today we're going to be talking about generator burnout. And before we go anywhere, I want to say something that feels really important to me. There isn't just one path to burnout. There isn't one reason it happens. There isn't one moment where everything suddenly breaks for everyone. But burnout, especially for generators, is often much more subtle than that. It's not always dramatic or obvious. It's often quiet and builds slowly. Oftentimes it looks like a life that is completely fine. So what I'm going to share today is one pathway. It's my pathway. And it's a pathway that I've seen reflected again and again in the women I work with. And if you're a manifesting generator, this applies to you too. Because at the core of this is not about your job or your schedule or your responsibilities. It's about your energy. It's about what happens when you continue to give your energy to something that no longer gives energy back. When satisfaction quietly turns into staying. If you're a generator and you've ever felt flat, but fine, like nothing is obviously wrong, but something isn't right either, like you're functioning, you're showing up, you're doing what's expected of you, but you're not fully there, not fully in it, not lit up, not connected, then this might resonate. And I invite you to just notice what happens in your body as I say that. Because for many women, this is not something that gets named. It's not something that feels like valid enough to question your life over. It's just a feeling, a quiet one at that. A dullness, a heaviness, a sense of going through the motions, like your life is moving, but you're not really inside of it. And this is where burnout often begins. Not with the collapse, but with the disconnection. For me, it didn't start as burnout. There wasn't a moment where I thought, something is wrong, I need to stop everything. It started as something much more subtle. I was in a role that I worked toward for years. I was, by all measures, successful. I was, and still am, highly capable. I was functioning at a high level. And from the outside, everything looked right. But inside, there was this quiet shift. And I didn't have language for it at the time, so I did what most of us do. I stayed. And I've seen this as a commonality in generators. It's often where we override ourselves. It's not that we don't feel the shift. We do. But we don't trust it. Because it doesn't come with a clear reason. It's not rational. It doesn't come with a plan or something obviously wrong to point to. It just feels like something has moved and we don't know what to do with that. So we just keep going. And over time, that flatness starts to change. For me, it became resistance. And not just mentally, physically. My body literally started to feel like it didn't want to go where I was taking it, where I was asking it to go every morning. And this is something I really invite you to hear. Because generator burnout is not just emotional. It's somatic. It lives in the body. Simple things started to feel heavier. Going into work, walking into a meeting, opening my laptop, even just orienting myself toward my day, there was this underlying resistance, like I was pushing myself through something that no longer had any natural momentum to it. And at first, I didn't question that. I thought, this is just part of being responsible. This is what it means to be committed or in higher leadership roles. It's what it means to be an adult. It's what it means to be a mom of one and then two and then eventually 3 kids. But underneath that, something else was happening. I started to lose trust in myself. Decision making became harder, even really small decisions, what to eat, what to wear, what to do with my time. Things that used to feel simple started to feel heavy, like there was no clear signal. And this is something I see often with generators who are burnt out. It's not just exhaustion, it's disconnection from your sacral, that steady, responsive knowing that guides you towards yes, no, or It starts to get quiet or confusing or maybe even inaccessible. And then for me, the anxiety started to come in. And again, this didn't happen all at once. It wasn't in a way that felt dramatic or alarming. At first, it was subtle, like a kind of dread before going into work, before certain meetings, before certain conversations, a feeling of, I don't want to be here, but I have to be. And that tension builds because your body is saying no, and your life is saying yes, and you are the one holding both. There were moments where I would need to step away, call a friend, call a therapist. I would stand on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, if you can imagine, just to regulate enough, not a place where you would think of regulation. But there were just moments where I literally felt the need to escape and regulate in order to go back in and continue. And I want to say that again because it's important. I didn't stop. I regulated myself to keep going. And from the outside, I was really functioning, still showing up, still doing the job, still being seen as capable, and doing a damn good job at it. But on the inside, I felt untethered, like I was pushing, forcing. I was forcing out of control, out of frustration. I was resentful and honestly faking it. And underneath all of that, there was this one feeling that I remember so clearly. I felt handcuffed, like I needed space. I desired it. I longed for it so viscerally. Space to feel myself again, space to hear myself again, space to reconnect to something inside of me that I couldn't quite access anymore, but I felt that I couldn't take it because there were responsibilities, there were expectations, my paycheck mattered, my family depended on me. I didn't have a plan, I didn't know what else I would do, and if I'm really honest, it wasn't just emotional, it was practical. Because when I say I felt handcuffed, I don't mean that lightly. I was the sole income earner. My husband was at home with the kids, so we had a life that depended on me continuing. So this wasn't just, I'm going to quit and take a break. It felt like if I stop, everything stops. And I know so many women live inside this exact reality, where it's not just about you. It's about your family, your responsibilities, the life you've built. And so the thought becomes, I can't leave. I can't pause. I can't take time. I can't afford it. And that thought feels true. It feels responsible. It feels grounded in reality. But what I started to see very slowly and very imperfectly is that it wasn't entirely true. It was a story, a powerful story, a convincing story, but still a story. Because underneath that statement of I can't was actually I don't see how, and those are not the same thing. And I'm not saying this lightly. I'm not saying just quit, just trust, just take the leap, because this is real. I know this. I've experienced this. And I've experienced that what began to shift for me was allowing just a little bit of space inside that story. Instead of I can't leave, it became what would it look like to give myself 3 months? What would need to be true? Not forever, not a full life overhaul, just space. And from there, what would it look like to give myself 6 months? A year? And then, very practically, we started to look at our life. What expenses, what investments actually matter? What can be paused? What is essential and what is just automatically assumed? Do we need everything we've built? Or have we built a life that now requires us to stay in something that no longer feels true? And this is the part I want to name gently, but honestly, because I see it often. Women who feel like they can't afford to pause while holding lives that are built around maintaining a certain level of comfort. Multiple cars, second homes, vacations, commitments, standards. And again, there is nothing wrong with any of that. But when those things become the reason you stay somewhere that is draining your life force, it's worth asking, at what cost? Because the cost of staying is not neutral. It's not just I keep going, I keep holding it together, I keep being responsible. It's I disconnect, I deplete, I override, I lose myself. And that cost is often invisible until it isn't. So this isn't about blowing up your life. It's about becoming honest about your life and what is actually necessary and what is negotiable, about where you have more choice than you think you do, and being willing, even just a little, to claim that for yourself. Not perfectly and not all at once, but enough to create space. Because space is what allows regeneration to begin. And this is the part that can feel so confusing because it doesn't feel like you're choosing to stay. It feels like you have to. It feels like there's no other option. So the loop continues. I feel anxious. I need space. I can't take the space, so I feel more anxious. I don't want to be here, but I have to be here. So I don't know what else to do. I'm stuck. At least this was my loop. And I've seen it in so many others as well. And this is where burnout deepens. Because from the outside, everything looks stable. But inside, your energy is already trying to move. And this is where burnout, especially for sacral beings like generators or manifesting generators, is often misunderstood. It's often framed as you're doing too much, you need more balance, you need to rest more, you need better boundaries. And while those things can be supportive, they don't get to the root. Because in my experience and in the experience of so many women I've worked with, burnout isn't primarily about how much you're doing. It's about what you're doing. It's about where your energy is going, where you're orienting your aliveness, your life force. Generator burnout happens when you continue to give your energy to something that no longer gives energy back. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because something has shifted and you haven't moved with it. And this is subtle. It's not about choosing something that was obviously misaligned from the beginning. It's about staying with something that was right, something that once lit you up, something that once felt like a full-bodied yes, and then something changed. Quietly, internally. And instead of responding to that shift, you stayed. For me, I had, almost a decade, almost 10 years of beautiful, life-giving, devotional, alive, lit up, satisfying, juicy years with L'Oreal. My mentors and my leaders were supportive and generous and kind and inspiring. I had all of the opportunity in the world There was nothing wrong. In fact, sometimes I wonder if it would have been easier and I would have left sooner before burning out and maybe letting people down had I had a Devil Wears Prada type boss situation, or had I been underpaid, undervalued, not seen or dismissed. But no, everything on the outside looked great, but everything on the inside felt wrong. Over time, slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it was so obvious in my body. I just couldn't ignore it anymore. I just couldn't push through it anymore. I remember talking to myself in the mirror saying, Julie, you can do this. You're responsible. You're committed. You're disciplined. You've got this. And I couldn't mentally push myself through it anymore. My energy had already moved on. My satisfaction had turned into staying, and it was burning me out. And this is where the generator experience is so important to understand. It's why I'm finally maybe telling the story in this way and recording this episode, because your energy is not meant to be forced. It's meant to be activated. It's meant to come alive in response to what lights you up, so that when that activation is no longer there, your body knows. Even if your mind doesn't, or even if your mind does and is trying to affirmation your way out of it, even if your life still makes sense, even if other people are telling you, this is amazing, you're doing so well, your body knows, and it starts to resist. But most of us don't leave something when that happens, whether it's a job or a relationship, a project, a role. We stay. Not because we're doing something wrong, but because we're human. We stay because it feels safe. We stay because it feels familiar. We stay because we've invested time, energy, and identity into it. We stay because we don't know what's next. We know what we don't want, but we don't know what we do. We stay because we've built a life around it, friends around it. We stay because we feel responsible. And sometimes we stay because it once felt so right, and we're holding on to that version of it, hoping it will come back. This is bringing up a lot of memories. And if you have an open spleen, as I do, there can be a deep attachment to what was, obviously. A kind of loyalty to the familiar, even when it's no longer alive. So instead of responding to what's true now, we stay loyal to what was true then. And again, this is where burnout deepens, because your energy keeps trying to move towards what's alive, towards what's true, but your life stays in place. And that creates a tension that's not always dramatic or loud, but it's constant and subtle and persistent. And over time, that tension becomes depletion. Now, I want to bring in something that I think is really important, because this is where I see so many generators get caught. When things start to feel off, we don't immediately question the thing. Instead, we often try to fix ourselves. We think, I need better balance. I need to manage my time better. I need to take care of myself more. I need to regulate my energy. So we start adjusting around the misalignment instead of actually addressing it. And for me, That looked like trying to optimize my life. I was in optimization era. Putting strict boundaries around leaving work earlier, doing yoga, running, creating so many systems, setting goals across literally every area of my life. Friends, I developed a balance wheel that had so many spokes. I even assigned different one of my friends to be the board of directors of each wheel. Everything was structured. Everything was intentional. Everything looked like I was doing the right things. And I hardly enjoyed any of it. I felt like I was moving from one obligation to another. I just simply set up a new dimension of obligation in my life. Work, wellness, home, self-improvement. Work, wellness, home, self-improvement. Trying to create balance, trying to manage my feelings, trying to fix the discomfort. But underneath all of that, the core issue wasn't being touched. The thing I was giving my energy to no longer lit me up. And this is the reframe. I want you to really hear this. No, actually, I want you to really feel this, not just hear it. Balance is often an attempt to manage misalignment. Fullness is what happens when you're aligned. Balance says, how do I make what I'm doing that I don't actually want to be doing anymore sustainable? Whereas fullness says, this is giving energy back to me. Balance distributes your energy, and fullness activates it. So you can create a perfectly balanced life around something that's draining you, and you will still feel depleted because your energy generator is not meant to be managed. It's meant to be met. I remember spending so much time focused on balance. I wrote so many affirmations in my journal around boundaries and balance until one day I realized, fuck balance. Balance doesn't actually feel good. I don't want a neutral, balanced life where I'm balancing one obligation toward another. No, I want to find and feel fullness. I want to find and feel alive. I want to be lit up. I want to feel free. And this moment happens for many generators. It's the moment where something stops feeling like a yes, but it's also not a total no. It's not clear. It's not dramatic. It's not even something you can explain because it's a feeling. It just feels less alive. And this is where so many generators lose themselves because we're waiting for clarity. We're waiting for something obvious. We're waiting for a reason that makes sense. But your energy doesn't work like that. Your body doesn't say, here's a rational explanation for why this is no longer aligned. No, it says simply, this doesn't feel good anymore. And that can feel so easy to dismiss because your life still works, your job still works, your relationships still work. Everything still makes sense. And sometimes that's what makes it the hardest to leave because nothing is wrong and leaving doesn't make rational sense. For me, that was one of the most disorienting parts. There was nothing I could point to and say, this is the problem. I had a great role, a great team, supportive leadership, opportunities, resources, people who wanted me to stay. They offered me everything, coaching, time off, flexibility, ways to reshape my role, even moving me. And still something in me knew, and that knowing didn't make sense. It felt irrational. To leave something that wasn't broken, to walk away from something that looked so good, to step into something that was completely unknown. And this is where the real tension lives. Because your mind wants logic. Your life wants stability. But your body wants truth. It orients you towards truth. And for me, that truth didn't come through a strategy. It came through a moment A moment where I was sitting there thinking about all the people that I might let down. My team, my bosses, the people who supported me, the people who truly believed in me. And my therapist said, "Who are you more afraid of letting down? Them or your little girl? The one who's pleading with you to choose yourself, to choose your joy, to choose your satisfaction, to choose your aliveness." And something in me broke open. Because in that moment, I could feel her. Not metaphorically, not conceptually. I could literally feel her. Little Julie. And she wasn't quiet. She was screaming. Not for a better plan, not for more balance, not for optimization. She was screaming, "Choose me. Stop doing what you should do. Stop doing what makes you feel safe. Stop being the good student, la bonne élève. Stop earning your worth through control, through achievement, through holding it all together. Choose what actually feels good." And I want to pause here because this is the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Oftentimes, alignment does not look logical. Sometimes it looks like not knowing what comes next. Oftentimes, it looks like choosing something and not knowing what comes next. And I know, believe me, I know that is terrifying. It was terrifying for me to not know, to not have a plan, to not be able to justify my decision in a way that made sense to other people, let alone myself. But what I learned is that your energy is not here to make sense. It's here to feel true. And those are not always the same thing. So I want to offer you something here, not as something to figure out, but as something to feel into. If your body could speak to you right now, without logic, without needing to justify itself, without needing to explain, what would it say? What would it tell you about where you're giving your energy? What would it tell you about what feels alive and what doesn't? And can you let that be enough, even if it doesn't make sense yet? Because this is where everything begins to shift. Not when you have a plan, but when you stop overriding the truth. And when you stop overriding the truth, when you start to step out of burnout, it doesn't immediately feel like aliveness. At least it didn't for me, and that can be often misunderstood. At first, it can feel like neutrality. The pressure was gone, the anxiety softened. There was also a kind of numbness. And alongside that, there was guilt. There was shame. There were questions. And if you don't understand this phase, you might think, "Oof, I made the wrong decision, shit." But this is not the end. This is actually the beginning of regeneration. And regeneration is quiet. It doesn't necessarily look like a breakthrough or a big new direction or immediate clarity. It looks like small moments of satisfaction, For me, it looked like going to a cafe and sitting in the sun, reading for pleasure, taking one of my kids early out of daycare and spending one-on-one time with them in ways that I like to spend my time. Moving my body because I wanted to, not because I should, because I had an accountability partner who was going to check a box for me at the end of the week. And those moments didn't feel important at the time. They just felt simple, almost insignificant. I almost felt shame about them. But they were everything, because they were the beginning of reconnection. For the first time in a long time, I was connecting to where my sacral wanted to move. And my energy was meeting something that met it back. And over time, those small moments began to accumulate. And something started to open. Space, lightness, possibility. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. And this is the arc I invite you to hold, because this is the part that doesn't get talked about a lot. Burnout, regeneration, reorganization. Burnout is the disconnection. Regeneration is the return. And reorganization is what happens when your life begins to align around what's actually true for you now. And reorganization does not come from forcing that next step. It comes from responding, from following what feels alive, from letting things fall away, from allowing your life to shift based on what's true now, not what was true then. So if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself somewhere, I offer you something simple. Not a plan, not a prescription, not a 5-point framework, just an orientation. The next time you feel that dullness, that resistance, that quiet knowing that something is off, instead of asking, how do I fix this? Try asking, is this still lighting me up? And be honest, not with your mind, with your body. And if the answer is no, you don't need to blow up your life, but you do have to stop pretending that it's a yes. You have to stop protecting the version of it that's keeping you stuck, because that's where depletion happens. And then gently begin to reintroduce satisfaction in small ways. Let yourself respond again. Let yourself feel again. Let yourself move toward what is alive. And even if it's quiet, even if it doesn't make sense yet, do it because it feels good. You don't burn out because you're doing too much. You burn out because you stayed somewhere your aliveness was no longer met. And that could mean that you're doing something for 3 hours that you loathe, and you can feel more burnt out than doing something for 10 hours that you love. So the moment you begin to listen again, even in the smallest way, something will begin to shift. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to reorient you. And maybe this is the only thing you need to take from this episode. If something in your life feels flat, heavy, quietly draining, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It might simply mean that something in you has already moved, and you don't have to figure it all out today. But you can begin by telling the truth, even just to yourself. This doesn't feel good anymore. And letting that be enough. Because from that place, from that honesty, from even the smallest moment of truth, regeneration begins. And from regeneration, your life will reorganize around that truth. Not because you forced it, but because you finally made space for what's true. And if you're a generator or manifesting generator listening to this and you're realizing, I don't know that I actually trust my energy anymore. I don't know that I know how to hear my yes. I don't know how to come back to that. That's exactly why I created the embodied orientation for generators and manifesting generators separately, unique to you. Not to give you more information, although it does give you a lot of foundational information, but to help you rebuild a relationship with your energy in your body, in real time, in your actual life, so that the next time something shifts, you don't have to stay past yourself. And if you feel a nudge towards that, you can find the link to it in the show notes if it feels like a yes as a next step. And if not, that's more than okay too. Honoring a no is part of honoring your truth. Just remember this. You don't burn out because you're doing too much. You burn out because you're doing things where your aliveness is not being met. You're saying yes when it's actually a no. But your aliveness is still there. She's waiting for you. Thanks for listening to Designed for More. If you felt sparked or seen in today's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review, share it with a friend, or come find me on Instagram at Julie by Design. And remember, your clarity is sacred and your joy is a signal. You are designed for more.